Hey, what's up? Hello, everyone. Welcome into Fantasy Filmball, the show where we turn movies into sports and sports into something we don't talk about here. My name is Matt.
My name is Dyl, and today we have our post-Cannes tech predictions. We've done picture, above the line, acting, so let's get into some more important categories. But before that, if you're new to the channel, welcome in. I hope that you learned something, or you can disagree with us. Let us know down below. We love seeing comments. Drop a like, drop a dislike, all that good stuff that helps the algorithm, and subscribe because we're doing these predictions each and every week all the way up until the Oscars, all the way in like March. And when that happens, we start up next year. It's never too early.
Never too early. So this week, we're going to be focusing on the technical categories of the Oscars, which means we're going to be talking about cinematography, editing, sound, and visual effects. So 4 categories, and we're going to blast through them, starting with my best cinematography lineup. So first off, I have The Color Purple at number 1 currently. I've had it at number 1 for a while, and I do have The Color Purple winning Best Picture. I think that cinematography would be part of a winning package alongside director and actress. Dan Laustsen has been doing so much recently. He's really earned it. He's been getting a lot of hype around himself, especially with John Wick Chapter 4. Looking at the trailer, it's a poorly edited trailer, but the lighting looks really, really beautiful, and it looks like there's a lot of long takes in the film. I'm not sure if there'll be long takes, but there looks to be a lot of camera movement that was poorly chopped up for the trailer. And if there's a lot of those long takes, a lot of really creative choices with the music sequences, I think that this could be just a shoo-in to win Best Cinematography. It definitely has the pedigree that it needs, and I just think it's going to look really stunning, really striking, very different than most other films, which is why I have it at number 1 right here. After that, I've got 2 films that I think look basically locked for nominations here, but neither of them looks flashy enough to me to win this category, and those are Killers of the Flower Moon and Oppenheimer. Killers of the Flower Moon, of course, shot by Rodrigo Prieto, and Oppenheimer shot by Hoyt van Hoytema. Both of these look really, really strong, but what I'm getting from the trailer is it looks like more of the same from the director, from the cinematographer, not enough to be striking to a point that'll win cinematography. People are going to disagree with me on that and say Oppenheimer could definitely win cinematography. From everything I've seen in the trailers, I don't see it as a win contender, but I do think it looks really, really strong for a nomination. What do you think about that, Dylan?
No, I definitely agree about your top 3 here. I have another movie included in my top 3 that you don't have here, but we'll talk about that when we get there. I think that Oppenheimer could win. It could not win. It really depends on if it gets into Best Picture, because it's been a while since we had a cinematography winner that was not nominated for Best Picture. So if that misses, probably not a winner. And same thing goes for Color Purple, Killers of the Flower Moon. I feel like all 3 of those are in Best Picture, so take your pick there. I think those are 3 great choices, and I think there's one more as well, but I like this top 3.
But I don't have Oppenheimer in Best Picture personally, so it just doesn't really make sense for it to win cinematography. Then my next one, this is going to be a bit of a controversial one. I know a lot of people would not have Nyad at number 4, but Claudio Miranda is shooting this, and I'm hoping that there's some goodwill for Claudio Miranda after his snub last year for Top Gun Maverick. There will probably be a really great narrative here with the technical requirements to get this movie done, seeing as it's a movie about swimming across a large channel of water. There's going to be a lot of water photography, I would assume, a lot of very sweeping shots, a lot of close-ups, I would guess. Claudio Miranda has done miracles with water in the past with Life of Pi, so I could see a huge narrative developing around Nyad. Even if the film isn't great, I could see it make it into cinematography based on this. Then at number 5, I have The Zone of Interest. And the cinematographer of this, Lucas Zal, he has 2 nominations before for Ida and for Cold War. And of course, Zone of Interest has insane reviews, which seem to be absolutely best of the year material. But apparently the photography in this is much more observational and experimental than beautiful. It's a lot of locked down cameras, shooting from wide angles. There's some night vision photography in here. It seems really interesting, but maybe not as traditionally beautiful as Lucas Sal's last two nominations. Ida, Cold War were both black and white films that were very, very distinct, very unique, but beautiful. And Zone of Interest doesn't seem like it's going for that. So I could see this being a snub, but I can also see a really great narrative building around Zone of Interest, especially because it's shot in a way unlike anything else.
Yeah, I mean, Naiad, you make a great case there. Claudia Miranda probably should have been nominated, probably should have won last year. So, like you said, maybe some goodwill. And we don't always get 5 movies that are in Best Picture in this category every year. I mean, last year we had 2 critically panned movies. So, regardless of how Naiad does, if it's beautiful, it has a shot here. And then Zone of Interest, I agree with everything that you said. I don't think this one is in winning contention, but a nomination kind of looks good at where we're at right now.
Back. At number 6, I have Poor Things, and I think that Poor Things could actually be a possible win contender. In my mind, this is the most beautiful looking movie we've seen footage from so far this year, but I really wonder if the admiration for the tech elements are going to come more down to the production design of the film rather than the cinematography, because the production design is so big, so colorful, it almost makes me feel that cinematographers might think of that as a crutch for the film, that, you know, of course it looks beautiful because the design of the locations is so nice. I feel the exact same way about Barbie, about Asteroid City, that it's very easy to snub that type of film because the production design is where the heavy lifting is really happening. But I do think if Poor Things gets nominated, it could win. And when we see more from the movie, maybe this becomes like a surefire nomination contender. And again, if so, I could see it winning in this category. After that, I have Maestro. Now, Maestro is apparently extremely mid, but so was Empire of Light. And something I've heard from all people who have seen Maestro is, the movie was boring, but hey, it looked really nice. It's a really well-made film. And so if it has beautiful photography, even if the movie is aggressively mediocre, it could still make it into cinematography. Empire of Light, Bardo, Elvis. Sorry, Dylan. Sorry. And then Dune Part 2 at number 8. This is another one people are going to yell at me for, but the question I have here is why nominate a film that's doing the exact same thing as the last one? You can go back in this category and you don't see a lot of nominations for films that are doing the same thing that the previous film had done. And honestly, I don't see them going for Dune Part 2 when it just looks the same as the first one. Like, you've given that an award before. I don't see them doing it again. And I bet that's the one that's in your top 3. Am I wrong?
It is the one, just because the trailer did give me a feel that there is some new stuff there, whether it's the stuff with like Austin Butler's Planet, where it looked like it's black and white, and some of the colors look a little bit more eye-popping, Ornarakis and stuff. However, to boost your point here a little bit, we can look to just last year where they do a lot of new stuff in Avatar: The Way of Water, and it still doesn't get in for this category.
Yeah, well, that's actually Avatar. Thank you for giving me that. That's a great point. Avatar: The Way of Water was just not nominated in cinematography or score. Those are the two categories that a lot of people thought, hey, it won last time. Actually, it didn't win score, but it won cinematography. And so it seemed like it should just make it in, and it didn't. It doesn't happen that way. I don't think that this branch is going to go for that, especially Avatar: The Way of Water was exceptional, and they did so many new things, and it still couldn't make the cut. So, yeah, Dune Part 2, what I'm going to keep saying is, why nominate a film that's just doing the exact same thing as the first one? I see your point. They are doing some black and white photography, but so is Maestro, so is Oppenheimer, so is Poor Things. They all have bits of it that are going to be in black and white. So, I don't know, man. Then I have The Killer. Not much to say on this one. David Fincher has had some films get in. Jeff Cronenworth is his cinematographer. If this film's really good, it could get in. Number 10, I also have John Wick Chapter 4, Dan Lawson. Look, as other films drop, this just looks stronger. That's kind of where I'm coming at right now with this. We know now, like, Past Lives is not a contender here, despite being a contender in other categories. Asteroid City just came out. I don't think it's going to make it in here. I don't think it has a better case for it in cinematography than John Wick. So, yeah, it's one of those things where it's not going to happen, but as other films drop out of the top 10, this film will kind of remain as like a solid, steady, not happening, but probably a better shot than that. And the last thing I want to mention here before we move on is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. It's tempting, but is it eligible? I don't know if it would be eligible. I'm going to say it's probably not eligible, but I think it would be a very worthwhile nomination in this category for the way that they use light, the way that they use color, the way that they use the digital camera and manipulate the digital camera.
Another one I want to mention is going back to The Killer, as even when David Fincher's movies aren't Best Picture players, they usually kind of perform well here in cinematography as well. I know Gone Girl didn't, but Girl with the Dragon Tattoo got in here.
But that is my cinematography lineup. Let's move over to Best Sound, and you're going to take this one.
I am, and I know that I said this the last time that I had Best Sound, which was like 2 months ago, but hey, Oppenheimer's 1A, Dune Part 2 is 1B. Take your pick. I don't really know which one right now, but I don't think Dune Part 2 is going to win as many awards as it did the first time. And this is a category like cinematography. I think you could maybe knock it down a peg and say it doesn't need that. So I have Oppenheimer at number 1, but I know the detractions for that. It's not an action movie. There's just going to be one sequence with the sound, but I am still holding on to the belief that that one sequence will be so exceptional that it will just ring in voters' minds and bring it up to the number 1 slot. But easily Dune Part 2 could overtake it, or even The Color Purple, if it is a Best Picture frontrunner, can elevate itself up to the number 1 slot. I don't have Color Purple winning Best Picture like you do, so that's why I have it at number 3, but it's definitely in win contention.
Yeah, I think your top 3 is pretty solid here. Personally, I think Dune Part 2 is still far, far ahead because it's going to be loud. The soundtrack is going to be booming. We know it's not going to have sound mixing issues, which Oppenheimer probably will because it's a creative choice, not a mistake. But yeah, with Oppenheimer, I don't know. I am a little bit more skeptical on this. I think the bomb blast scenes are going to be exceptional. The question is just, is everything else around that going to be good? Is it going to be well done? Is it going to have those Tenet problems? Because the problem I find with Nolan isn't that he mixes sound poorly in action scenes. It's that he mixes sound poorly in scenes where you should be able to hear things, right? That's the whole Interstellar issue with Michael Caine on his deathbed, but the music is blaring so loud. You know, it's not, I'm not worrying about how hard it will be to hear people when the bomb goes off, because it makes sense to not be able to hear them then. What I'm worried about is, will he have restraint with the music in the moments where we're supposed to hear people? So I don't have Oppenheimer at number 1, but I do have it in my top 5 because I think that the bomb blast sequence will be exceptional. Dune Part 2, I think we're going to see an editing sound win again. And Dune Part 2 makes sense. I keep saying that Dune Part 2 is going to win less than the first one, but I still think it has editing, sound, and visual effects, and probably makeup in the bag. So those are kind of how I feel about Dune Part 2 right now. Color Purple, I'm going to say not in win contention here. It's not going to be loud enough. It's not going to be big enough, but it makes sense for it to be in your top 5. What else do you have?
So at number 4, I have Killers of the Flower Moon. This is the only movie in my top 5 that has been seen publicly. And I mean, people said it sounded good. We saw Power of the Dog a few years ago get in for very similar sound work. You have the sounds of the Midwest, the desert, all that type of stuff. Plus, with it being a Scorsese movie, there's probably going to be at least 1 or 2 action sequences that will help elevate it in this case. So I think that Killers of the Flower Moon is a very good one for a nomination, but I don't see it in that winning category.
I completely agree. Gunshots, explosions, it's a Scorsese movie.
So that brings us to the fun part with this category, and that is the number 5 slot. I've been saying for a little bit, maybe Ferrari. They like vroom vroom, but Ferrari's probably not going to be a good movie, and usually those vroom vroom movies still don't get in when they're that bad. I know like Transformers got in, but that's when there was 2 categories, so we only have 1 now, so Ferrari's my number 6. It's just on the outside looking in. I'm taking a little bit of a swing here, and I'm going for another war movie, and one that may have mixed buzz, but I feel like its craft work can maybe overcome some of the mixed buzz that there is around it, and that is Napoleon. I think that they lean in enough to some of the war sequences that sound maybe Visual effects can be like a too little double nomination, or it could be completely nothing. But we are in June. Why not take a swing? Because like visual effects, which I'll talk about in a little bit, number 5 is kind of open out there. So why not go for something a little bit more adventurous than just saying like, oh, it's Mission Impossible or it's Indiana Jones or something. I don't know. That's kind of how I feel with that 5-6 slot.
Hey, I respect it, but I think Napoleon is a wild pick here.
Hey, that's what I gotta do.
Yeah, I respect the boldness, but I mean, Ridley Scott's track record. I know you're very excited for Napoleon, so I'm not going to crap all over this film right now, but something to keep in mind, it is a war movie, but it's not a boom boom war movie because it's set in like the 1900s. There might be some cannons going off. That could be a really good point for it, but it's more swords than guns at this point.
Swords still make good sounds.
Swords do, I mean, they do make good sounds. They can do some of that, but I don't know if I would be confident enough in it because, I mean, if it was like 2020, something like this could make it in, right? Greyhound made it in with like mixed to negative buzz, but I feel like it would be like calling Indiana Jones at this point because I don't see Napoleon getting over like a 60 on Metacritic.
That's what I've been riding with for a while, but I felt like, let's switch up a little bit. I mean, there's been a trailer seen by some people of Napoleon. They said it looks good, so that's what I'm going off of here. Rest of my 10, though, these are probably better options. I'm just not seeing the angle in for them at the moment. The Killer, right now, I have it getting nothing, but like I mentioned over in cinematography, if this movie's as good as some of those Netflix shareholders say it is, it can easily move up into like an acting category, cinematography, sound, visual effects, editing, something. Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, maybe, but this franchise has never got a nomination, and why would they start now? And then at number 10 is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. There's categories where this could get in outside of animation. This is probably not one of them, because most people, even those who love it, said, hey, there were sound issues. I know they fixed them since then.
They have fixed it, yeah.
But at least for me, I still think of, hey, sound issue the first time I saw it, and I don't know how voters will think.
Okay, I'm going to give you the one that I have at my number 5, because you said you were looking for something a little bit bold, a little bit daring as your pick for number 5, and that's why you went with Napoleon. But I think more daring than going with a war film that's going to get mixed reviews is a war film that has the best reviews of the year, because The Zone of Interest, I think, is very much worth considering in Best Sound, especially because when the initial buzz hit at Cannes, people were saying this should get a nomination for picture, director, and sound. Sound was the one everyone mentioned right away because the whole movie is based on sound. Your entire experience of the Holocaust, of the war, comes from the way that they use sound, the way that you hear things in the distance, the way that gunshots are perfectly placed. You hear screams from across the wall. That, to me, sounds like it might be a little bit avant-garde, a little bit different, a little bit too unique for a category that really leans hard on this movie has explosions, let's nominate it. But it reminds me a lot of 2018, where we had Roma get in both sound categories, or 21, where we had Power of the Dog. Both films didn't have out there, in-your-face sound, which The Zone of Interest doesn't either, but it's a similar type of thing to me. Which is why I have it at my number 5 slot.
You make great points. I will be completely honest. I haven't seen those comments about the sound, but now that I'm hearing that, yeah, it probably should be in my 10 at least, if not even higher. One movie I forgot to mention before, Wonka, musical, but they're probably not putting 2 musical movies in there, but if Color Purple's not as strong, maybe Wonka, I don't know. And one other movie, I guess, just to mention it, there's John Wick, but I would probably say no, but maybe that's just me being a hater. I don't know. Maybe it could. It has the same argument I guess Napoleon has, boom booms and action, but I don't know. I like your Zone of Interest comments though, but so probably when I revise these going into next month, Zone of Interest will at least be my 10, if not higher.
Well, I have the same winner for Best Sound and Best Editing, which is Dune Part 2. I keep saying, again, Dune is not going to win everything that it did the first time, but editing, sound feel really good to me. I mean, the first film barely won editing, I will say. It looked like it could have been King Richard up until the last moment, but then Dune won anyways. I don't think it's going to be the same this time. I think that because there's the intercutting between planets, I think that it's going to be very, very strong for a win here. So Dune Part 2, I've got as a tandem, sound, editing, winner. The streak is going to come back after being broken last year with Everything Ever All at Once and Top Gun Maverick. Then at number 2, I see The Color Purple as having a big potential for very bombastic editing, as well as having an interesting dichotomy between very fast takes and music sequences and a lot of long takes. So the pacing of the editing could be really interesting, and that's why I have it at number 2 here. It might be very different, very unique. Number 3 and 4, I've got Killers of the Flower Moon and Past Lives, and always in the editing category, we get films that aren't necessarily in here for the editing, but are in here because they are picture win contenders. And that's what I see Killers of the Flower Moon and Past Lives as. They're not films that are really going to be in here as like win contenders for editing themselves, but they're in here because, they're really powerful in Best Picture, and those types of movies always make it into Best Editing. Now at number 5, I'm taking a big risk here, but fuck it. I think that this is gonna be a big surprise. Now, I don't know if this is eligible. This is one thing, but I don't know if animation is eligible in Best Editing or if they would go for it, but I'm gonna take a big risk and say Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. There are so many films that we see every year that release early, have crazy, insane buzz, and we immediately go, oh, is the tech branches of the Academy really going to love this 6-7 months from now? And the answer is, yeah, probably. Think Mad Max, Get Out, Black Panther, Top Gun Maverick, Elvis, Everything Everywhere All at Once. Films that had that buzz, had those tech supports early on, and then did they disappear? No, they ended up carrying it through the year. And Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse has some of the best editing I think I have ever seen. That's a really bold call. What do you think about a potential of Spider-Verse getting editing?
I mean, you said you don't know if it's eligible. I don't think there's a reason why it wouldn't be eligible, but hey, who knows? I think it has a shot, but it really would need to be a Best Picture top 3 movie for me. I know I said in our review of this movie and last week's predictions, I'm not as high on this one as you are. So for me, I would say it's not top 10, but I fully get if you do have it in picture and if you do have it top 5, yeah, editing would probably have to come along with it. However, your number 6 is what I have at number 1, so take us away with why it is missing editing.
Well, Oppenheimer, number 6 right here. I think it has a great narrative for editing, even if it misses Best Picture, which, again, I don't have Oppenheimer in Best Picture. But that said, the narrative here is really compelling. It's a movie that has big sound, which is always good for the editing category, and it cuts a lot between time periods. It cuts between perspective, objective and subjective perspective with the color versus black and white photography. That's pretty compelling, but I don't know. I just am kind of expecting Oppenheimer to underperform across the board, and I don't know what I would take out here. I want to make a big swing with Spider-Verse because I think that it deserves it, and it feels like the type of movie that would make it in as like a Mad Max type contender. I don't know. So Oppenheimer is just outside, but there's a very compelling argument for putting it in over top of something like Past Lives, Killers, Spider-Man, Color Purple. Honestly, I think the only film that's locked in editing right now is Dune Part 2, and I could see Oppenheimer making it in there too. Now, a couple of other ones here. The Holdovers is one that I see as a potential editing nomination if it is a top 3 Best Picture contender, the same way that Killers of the Flower Moon, Past Lives are in here because they are very, very strong Best Picture contenders. If The Holdovers is that, it could make it in here. If not, don't count on it. At number 8, I have Air, which is pretty interesting because I don't have Air in Best Picture. I don't have it in Actor. But let's say Air does make it into Best Picture. What is one of the easiest nominations to come along with that? And I would say it's editing because it's a very quick film. It's a very sharp film with the edits. There's a lot of editing happening here. Plus, I'm going to be honest, the editing category is pretty, they're pretty lowbrow. Not lowbrow. And I'm going to be honest, the editing category is pretty mid-brow in the type of films that they like to nominate. So something like Air feels like something that they would go for. I mean, they've nominated like Green Book in the past. They don't really go for the artsy films. They really go for the crowd pleasers here, and Air makes sense there. Then at number 9 and 10, I have Poor Things and The Zone of Interest. These feel like they might be an artsy passion pick, where I just said Air would be a more populist pick for this category, which they go with a lot, but sometimes they go with those artsy passion picks, like The Favorite back in 2018. So it's possible that these could make it in here, but I don't think that they normally go for films like this.
Oh, most definitely. And I think that if May December does become Netflix's main push, and it's getting a lot of love above the line, maybe this is a category we can kind of sneak in like Tar did last year. I do agree, though, if Ferraris in sound, editing could be potential. And you mentioned how the editor's branch doesn't really care about, how critically loved your movie is. I mean, Don't Look Up got here, so maybe Dumb Money could as well in that sort of fashion. Yeah. But that movie would need to be a player somewhere else. It wouldn't be a lone editing nomination. It would need to be like popping up in like a picture or a screenplay as well to be in the conversation here.
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is a category where sometimes we see a film that's not in Best Picture make it in here. So I could see that happen, but I'm not counting on it right now. I do have my entire top 5 in my Best Picture lineup as well.
All right, that brings us over to Best Visual Effects, and this is the easiest award for the year because Dune Part 2, here is your award. If you lose everything else, at least you're walking home with this one because Avatar: The Way of Water did it. Dune Part 2 is going to do it as well.
Absolutely. If you got anything else other than Dune Part 2, you got to check your eyes, my dude. It's just what's going on. That's just what's happening. It's undeniable.
And speaking of undeniable, Marvel, they proved that last year. They're always in the race, regardless if they get Visual Effects Society. They're still getting in, and that's why at number 2 I had my Marvel slot. And we know it's not Ant-Man. It's probably not the Marvels. It's most likely going to be the one Marvel movie that's probably going to be a both critical and audience success while also making money, and that's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
Yep, great pick, great pick.
Number 3 and 4 is where, I have a little bit of controversial picks, but hey, that's what June is for, and visual effects is a category which this year looks kind of tough to pick after you get past number 2. So I do have Oppenheimer getting in. Yes, it's not going to have much, but it does have something, and that's something I think can carry it a long way. And at number 4, let's bring you over from sound. Double nomination like I talked about over there. We have Napoleon, same sort of things. If it's not in sound, it's not here, but I think they go hand in hand. I don't think this movie's just getting 1, it's 2 or 0.
I'll tackle both of these a little bit. I've talked a lot about Oppenheimer's visual effects in the past. I just think that the way that they're marketing this as Nolan saying, we didn't use any CGI, this is all real, it's all in camera, that's gonna kill it in this category. And Napoleon, I guess the thing that I see here with Napoleon is, like, what visual effects are there gonna be outside of, like, again, background replacement? But that happens in every single movie. There's not really gonna be any big characters that are done through CGI. It's just going to be making battles look bigger, which we see every single year, and it doesn't typically get nominations. So, I don't know. I would combat those two, but I think your first 2 are really, really strong picks, but these 2 just don't feel like nominees to me.
I totally get that. I mean, Oppenheimer for me is going to be more of, we love in these other categories, let's throw it another bone somewhere else, and I fully get this may not even be shortlisted, but I would say if it makes the short list, it has a good shot.
VFX. Like last year they could have done that for Everything Ever All at Once, which had a lot of visual effects, but they didn't throw it a bone there, even though they loved it. And it, Dunkirk is a great example to go back to. Dunkirk didn't even make the short list, and that one had more explosions than Oppenheimer is going to.
Fair enough. Number 5 is one I think you and I will agree on, and that is a solo VFX nomination going to the creator. And to make space for that, we had to axe Little Mermaid, Indiana Jones, because, hey, these movies came out, and while some people love them, some people don't, and they probably can't overcome the hate. Well, the creator just has to say, hey, we're just a movie, but we have this one aspect that is great.
Yeah, the creator is a great pick. Gareth Edwards, he knows what he's doing with visual effects. The trailer, I don't know how I feel about the film, but the visual effects look absolutely stunning.
And then we have Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. I know when we talked on our review, we both said that we kind of liked the VFX, but there's a lot of people out there who say they look bad. So to me, it could be shortlisted.
Ugh.
But yeah, almost every review I've listened to this movie mentioned they thought VFX were the weakest part. But, we liked it, so we know we're the smarties here. Number 9 is a movie that I think that definitely could get in. I just want to see something from it first, and that is David Fincher's The Killer. If it's popping up in score or sound or editing, visual effects probably could come along with it. And rounding out my 10 is Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1. It's just here because I need something here. Barbie's a no. I'm not putting multiple Marvel movies in my list. DC, yeah, right. And I guess, I know you'll talk about Spider-Verse, but to me, I'm going back to 2020. If Soul couldn't do it in an empty year, how is Spider-Verse going to do it in a year where there's actual competition?
Well, the reason there would be that Soul almost got in. And yes, it was an empty year, but it was so close. And the difference is, Soul wasn't revolutionary. Spider-Verse completely, they built new technology for Spider-Verse to make this happen, to adjust the way that they did frame drops, to every single part of this film is just so well thought out. I think visual effects people will really resonate with the technology that was created to make this film a reality. A lot of it was created for the first film, but it was really perfected on this film. So I think that's a great argument for it. I could really see them doing a presentation on this and being like, these are all the ways that we had to shift the way that animated films are made in order to make this work. I don't know. Question mark if it's eligible or not, but I think that if it gets shortlisted, it gets nominated. That's the way I see it, but the shortlist is really the issue there. Other things that I want to mention, Rebel Moon just had some footage released, and it looks really strong. We have a pretty barren year for a lot of visual effects, and even if Rebel Moon is kind of not great, if the visual effects are really strong, it could get in here. Now, we've never had a Zack Snyder movie get into visual effects, but he's got to eventually, right? Someday he's gonna get in, and maybe Rebel Moon is the one to do it. Otherwise, Poor Things might be a shortlist contender. I wouldn't say it's a nomination contender, but the visual effects look really interesting there, as well as Wonka. I assume will have quite a bit of visual effects in the same way that something like Napoleon or Indiana Jones or The Killer would. I would say Wonka would have some stuff too. And a Netflix movie that's going to get some poor reviews, but will probably still be worth mentioning here is Spaceman. That's going to have a lot of gravity effects, I think that there's a giant spider in the movie, which might be kind of interesting to look at. It'll probably get bad reviews, but it might be worth mentioning for visual effects anyways.
So for everyone out there, definitely let us know down below what things you agree with, which things you disagree with. We love to see it, and we love interacting. Make sure to come back next week, though, because we'll be diving into our next set of predictions. And Matt, just to remind everyone out there, what will we be talking about next week?
Next week, we're going to be talking about the crafts. That's score, song, costume design, production design, and best makeup and hair. And I'm so pumped to talk about, because I think I get to talk about music next week. Spider-Verse is winning score.
That is a bold take, which we will talk about next week.
We'll talk about next week.
Drop a subscription because you definitely don't want to miss that episode. But until then, my name is Dyl.
And my name is Matt, and this is Fantasy Filmball.